What's up, guys?
It's Monday Miracle Monday.
Yay! Okay, today we have a special guest.
Our very first ever podcast guest.
Migs, who
Hi.
is, she's a friend of mine from North Carolina, and she has an awesome story to tell, and I just knew I wanted her to come on the podcast because she is just such a light for Jesus, and she's a businesswoman, and she's just awesome. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, for starters, I have a little coffee cart business. It's called Rooted, and I started it mostly it was just always a dream of mine, but I also, once becoming like a Christian and finding my faith, I wanted it to like really represent what it was that I'm doing now, which is being rooted in my faith. And at least I'm aiming to do so. Mm-hmm. But I also wanted that to become like a ministry for others like that need to reach out for help or just need some like guidance with their faith. It doesn't have to be me. It can be anybody else. I can show them to another person that can answer certain questions. But I also wanted it to be a place where people can reach out if they need any like mental health resources, whether it is to find a good like Christian therapist or find the right kind of people to speak to if they are struggling with something, or we can share our stories together. I've been through quite a journey with my mental health, so been there, done that, got it, like kind of thing. So I just wanted to be able to show that to other people and like bring awareness to mental health as well. And like it doesn't, just because you're Christian doesn't mean like you don't go through it. Like not Christians are not perfect.
Yeah,
and
definitely not.
Yeah, so it's also like anybody like that may need that, like definitely. But I think personally my mental health has been better ever since I became a Christian. So I think that was the main goal with Rooted.
So what was the thing that was like, okay, I'm going to start this business, and what did you do to like actually take a step towards it?
It was like feeling like I wasn't doing more than I should be doing, I think is the best way of explaining that. I had been saving money. I did have money saved. So it wasn't like I just woke up one day and I was like, oh, okay. But it was also like that thought of like, I'm 20. At the time I was 21 years old. I'm not getting any younger. I don't have any responsibilities with children right now or anything like that. So might as well do it now rather than later. And it's also like I can reach a younger audience if I'm younger too. So it doesn't say like, oh, I'm not going to reach out to someone that's older when I'm going through a kind of younger person problem or a teenager or something, because I was recently a teenager. So I also wanted to reach a younger audience with that too. And like, it's also to show like anybody can do it. Like you don't have to have thousands of dollars to start it. You can start it off with a table, a little sign, and just like things from Amazon really. And then just like finding the right roaster and like buying your machine that I had bought it when I was 20. I was determined to have it, and so I saved up for that, and then I saved up again for that, and I was like, all right, what am I waiting for? Just gotta do it.
That's what you gotta do.
Yeah.
Sometimes we spend so much time like just thinking of things that we just never do it. Like that's how we were with the podcast. Like we had both wanted our own podcast for years, but it was like sometimes you just wait around like for something to like happen out of thin air, and it's like it's never gonna happen till you make it happen, like with anything, you know? Yeah, and I think that's amazing too because you're so young. How are you? 21? 22?
I'm 22 now.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's incredible because at 22 I had no means to start a business. And so I think that's awesome. I wish you the best with it. I can't wait to try your coffee.
Yeah, same.
Thank you. I can't wait for it to visit.
Yeah. When we do, you better be open, even if it's a weekday. Just kidding.
Yeah.
But you think you're ready to jump into it?
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us about your story, your testimony, how you grew up, and how you came out of the way you grew up in and how you came to find Jesus.
So I was born into a religious cult, which it might seem like a big word to put out there, but it truly is a cult. And I did not realize that until recently. But yeah, this cult, it was just high control, manipulation, a lot of just wanting to put women down. And it wasn't like that you noticed it until you took a step back and you said, okay, this is different from everybody else. Why so? I met my now husband, Kirby, when I moved here from California. So I moved from California to North Carolina during the pandemic. So
Wow.
it was a big move for us, but we were tired of like it being so dry out there, and we had animals, so we just came out here for farming purposes primarily. But little did I know, yeah, my now husband was my next door neighbor, and we were friends for a while, and then we dated, and then while we were dating, he realized that every single day I wore skirts, like whether I was at the farm or whatever, like I was wearing skirts, and like not skirts like down to my knee, it was skirts down to my ankle, under my ankle. It had to be. For women, you have to wear long skirts, no earrings, no jewelry at all, not even wedding rings. Like women that are married do not wear wedding rings.
Wow.
Nothing like that. You can't cut your hair to like, it has to be a pretty decent long length. And it's just like makeup, it was a very minimal thing, if any. On your wedding day, it was kind of like an exception. Yeah, like your nails, you can't paint your nails any other color but clear,
Oh
or
my gosh.
the color of your nail. So yeah, it was so specific. Like you had to have sleeves. If you didn't have any sleeves, or like they were like a tank top or anything like that, it was like tempting for men, which I never understood that, because I mean, I don't find shoulders attractive, but okay. So yeah, it was so like controlling in that sense, like for women specifically. And he noticed that, and he asked me like what I believed in. So I was like, kind of gave him a gist of it, but I just didn't want to get into it, because at the time, and still to this day, but at the time it was like pretty recent that the leader of this cult was in jail
Oh,
for
wow.
just very explicit things. So it was something that I didn't want to necessarily tell him, because I didn't want him to actually like look it up and find out the truth. But
Yeah.
to me, like it was just accusations. I did not know anything about it. It was lies. But he like obviously he looked into it. So yeah, the cult's name is the Light of the World, or better known as La Luz del Mundo. So this place, it started in Mexico, but it's gone to the whole world. Like you name it, Lexington, North Carolina, Charlotte, anywhere you are, it's there. Like it's in your neighborhood, that kind of thing. So they were able to expand a lot, but I think with this whole new thing with the leader, a lot of people have left, like including myself. A lot of people left, and they started realizing like, okay, maybe this isn't normal because of the things he was being accused of, but there was proof. So he was sat down with me a couple of times. We talked for a span of a whole year about this, fighting
Wow.
back and forth about it. And I was like, no, like, no, it's not this, this, and that. And he's like, no, but in the Bible it says this. And I'm like, no, it's not. And it's just like, it was back and forth, back and forth. And this place is like supposedly biblically based, but they don't always read the entire verse of the Bible or the whole chapter. They cut things out, they only mention certain things. And then the way that they control it is whenever they're speaking on the pulpit, they read that portion, and then they like go on to try to explain the portion, or according to what the leader says that meant. So like it's like they say that a member can't read it on their own and understand it on their own. That the leader has to explain it to them. If there's no leader, there's no way of understanding the Bible to them. That's what it is. And I was like, after all this, I was like, oh wow, okay, that's so messed up.
Yeah.
But yeah, to them it's like, if this leader's like dead, then there's no way to heaven. He's the one that's supposed to take you to heaven. He's no, like, without him, there's no salvation available on earth. So to them, when the last apostle in the Bible, Paul, died, and up until 1926, when this other apostle from this cult started this cult, there was no salvation within that period to them.
Whoa.
Insane.
They call it the dark time. So
Oh my gosh.
yeah, I asked them one time, I was like, so what happened to those people? They're like, they all went to hell. I was like, excuse me, okay. Oh, got it.
Wow.
But like, yeah, so like anybody that's not from this cult, they think everyone else is, well, they call them Gentiles, but everyone else is going to hell. So if you don't believe in the apostle, you're going to hell. That plain and simple. But it's like, it goes like, that's like the primarily one, and then it goes down to little things like, if you die without, as a woman, you're not wearing a skirt, you're going to hell.
Oh my gosh.
Even if like, yeah, or if you were like in a wreck or something and you're not wearing a skirt, you're going to hell, kind of thing.
Wow.
And like, they're not like, they tell their members to not go to your funeral. Like, they tell them like, you cannot go, you cannot honor their body or whatever. So yeah, they it's such a weird thing. And it's just like, you have to ask permission to go out of town. If you don't do that and you die like being out of town, then you're going to hell, kind of thing.
So
yeah.
Is it, since it's all over the world, when you say you have to ask permission to go out of town, like you have to ask your like local pastor?
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so the levels, it's like the apostle guy leader, and then it's like the council of bishops, which is like his like tightest niche of guys that are kind of, right now, since he's in jail, he's in prison, they are the ones like running the place right now, like to his orders, I guess, but that's not what everyone thinks is happening, but that's what they say. It's like, oh, they're the ones kind of running the place for now, according to what he tells them to do. So yeah, and then after that, it's like the pastors and the deacons, the ministers, the missionaries, and then the men, and then the women. That's it.
Wow.
Like, the women are like down to the ground. Nobody cares kind of who you are. You're the slaves, you're the objects, that's it. Yeah. That's your place in here. So yeah, Kirby was trying to explain to me biblically that this place wasn't biblically accurate. And I was like, no, they say that it's like run by the Bible. And he's like, no, like just start off with like John 1. And that's what actually got me, was it was like, obviously, like finding out all this stuff about the leader, and me there is just already like doubt in my mind. But it was also him reading John 1 and like understanding like who God truly was and who Jesus truly was. That could not wrap my mind around that. I was so confused. I was so amazed. I was just like, wow, okay, that's different. And it was almost like he read it one time a couple months before that, and he let some time pass, and then again he read it, and it was like almost like a blindfold taken off of me at that very moment. And I was like, this is not how I read it the first time. So what's different now? But it was just, I guess I was looking for it now. Now I was open to it, and I was open to receiving the truth. Back then it was just me defending myself, which, you know, in a way it was like the only way I ever knew was to defend myself. So
that makes me like kind of emotional, because you said earlier that when you were in the cult, like it was discouraged for you to even read the Bible without the interpretation of, you know, the higher authorities. And so it's just so amazing how God like revealed himself to you through his word, just through that one, like, or I guess two, through the just the very small times of Kirby like reading that to you or having you read it. It was just so powerful, and that's what they were keeping you from.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely true. I had never experienced the Bible like that before. I've never had a moment where I was like, "Oh, that's what that means." It was always like whatever they said was whatever I was told. And it was just so funny how like I would go to Sunday on Sunday mornings. Well, here what in the cult you go every day, 3 times a day, 5
Wow.
a.m., 9 a.m., 6 p.m. If you can't go to the 5 a.m., then you go to the 9 a.m. If you can't go to the 9 a.m., then you go to the 6 p.m. But you have to at least go once a day. But if they say, like, if you're the best Christian, then you'll go 3 times a day. But yeah, they, for Sundays specifically, like, it was always like, or any day, like, when I would go, I'd take my Bible, take my notebook, I'd be taking notes and read whatever they told me to read. Then I would put my Bible and my notebook in the car, never looked at it again until the next time I would go. And like it wasn't me like curious of it. Like it was just whatever I was given anyway. It was like rations. Like now I couldn't look for anything else. I wasn't curious of anything, and that's such a big difference to where I'm at now. It's like if I go when I go on Sunday morning, I'm excited about it. One, I'm excited about it, and then two, it's like now I want to go home and read more about it, or or I can't wait for tomorrow's Bible study. And it's just like you're so much more excited to be with God because there's that relationship. And there's no longer that barrier that I had then. It's like, whenever you'd pray, you know how like Christians pray in the name of Jesus. They say in the name of the apostle. And it was like you had a barrier between you and God. Like you can't get to God directly. You can't have a relationship with God. You have a relationship through the apostle to God, but that's it. Like no more. So it was so conditional. It was a lot more like good works make you a good Christian kind of thing. There was no such thing of being saved. I never heard of that until Kirby. I was like, what do you mean? Like, what is that? And like he would read to me like Ephesians and like Romans, and now he's explaining it to me, and I'm like, it's just not clicking. Like I have no idea what you're saying. You're like speaking a foreign language to me right now. And yeah, so yeah.
So did they use like God's name, Jesus's name? Like what did they use?
Yeah, so for their baptisms, so they say they use the Bible verse of like no one that hasn't been born again through water and spirit can go to heaven. That Bible verse. Don't know it by memory. But they use that. So when you turn 14 or when you first convert into the cult, because the age of like, I guess, like responsibility is 14. At 14, you present yourself to the church. You go in the middle, you stand in front of everyone, you tell them, I'm going to stay here, or, I mean, obviously everyone tells them I'm going to stay here because their parents tell them if you don't say that, then you're not going to have a home to go home tonight to. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, they tell us they're 14-year-olds, okay, you're going to go up there, you're going to say this, and that, or like they say like whatever your heart desires, but you have to say what the apostle wants to hear.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. So once you do that, like then you go into doing a baptism. So you get baptized. A lot of the times they do, well, when I got baptized it was like international baptisms, and I went into like, it was in LA, and the giant, like obviously like it was like a pool, and they baptize you in the name of Jesus. But whenever they're baptizing you, it's like to wash away your sins. So it's not It's not like a public announcement of your faith. It's you washing away your sins by the authority of the apostle,
Wow.
in the name of Jesus Christ.
So,
That's how
what is the point of washing away your sins if there's
exactly.
no salvation?
Exactly. That's my question. That's always been my question when I was in there. I was like, well, what was the point of doing that if I'm gonna sin again the moment I walk out of there?
Yeah.
Like the moment you can have a thought right after you get out of there and you're sinning again. So what was the point of washing away your sins? It was so confusing to me. But yeah, so then after that, there's something called like, it's not like everyone else's revival. They have something called revivals. And it's you and a bunch of other people knelt, like you're kneeling on the ground, and it's just, I have to say it's one of the scariest moments of my life. I think that's the only moment that I think I felt in a negative presence. I would
Wow.
say, like, so men and women are separated at all times in the temple. Like men are on the left side and the women are on the right side. And in this revival, it's like they put the women, like there's this open space. They put like plastic on the bottom on the ground, and you're all kneeling on this plastic, and you tell, or you're praying that because there's an apostle alive on earth, that the Holy Spirit may come into you. And then if it comes into you, then you start speaking in tongues. There is no interpreter like the Bible asks for there to be an interpreter, so that debunks that.
Yeah.
Um, and it's also like you, it's gibberish really,
Yeah.
but at the same time, as I always wondered, like, well, like I technically received the Holy Spirit that I spoke in tongues, but it's always like a weird thing is like I was speaking to a friend that came to visit this weekend, and she was saying like I seriously thought like it wasn't me speaking, and I was like, honestly, I think it was demonic. Like,
Yeah.
because it was such a weird experience, and like there's people foaming at the mouth, there's people like on the ground like banging. Now when I was when I was doing that, there was this one occurrence. There wasn't when I was asking for the Holy Spirit, it was another time. And I was helping someone, like you help, you can help people by praying with them, or like singing hymnals to them, hymns to them. And there was this woman on the wall, like she was held on by her fair bare fingers on the wall, and like screaming and doing something. And there's this man that like tried to yank her off the wall, and she like elbowed that guy so far away. Like
Oh
I was,
my
this guy was
gosh.
like a bodybuilder guy. How could she do that? She was a scrawny little thing. I have no idea. It was the craziest thing I had ever seen. And
Yeah.
I was like,
Wow.
I gotta get out of here. I can't do this. Like this is weird. Like I literally got up, went to the bathroom and I cried because that was such like a just crazy moment to me, even when I was in the cult,
Yeah.
believing in the cult.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was like you do all of that, but then there's no salvation. There's no secure salvation. There's no like, okay, after all these steps, you still have to work yourself to death
Yeah.
Yeah.
to maybe, just maybe, go to heaven,
As
but
long as you're
not
wearing a skirt.
as long as you're wearing a skirt and you don't pierce your ears.
And go to church 3 times a
Yeah,
day.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. Like no tattoos, no alcohol, no like smoking or whatever, like any of that. Like just no. Anything like, oh, no proms, no dances. You don't move your body in any way that may somehow be a dance. It's a big no-no, unless you're doing it for the apostle. That's a whole other story. Like that, if you they allow that
Oh
if you're doing
gosh.
it for him. And that's another thing, is that they would choose from those 14-year-olds the prettiest ones for you to go serve. Either you start off with the ministers and you go up your way up that same line that I was talking about. So another girl that the girl that came to visit me, she left the cult, and she reached out and said like, "Hey, I'm out too." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." So we watched the documentary, because there is a documentary on Netflix and on HBO Max about it. We watched the documentary together, and we just cried our eyes out and everything, and it was a good healing moment
Yeah.
Yeah.
for us. But I remember we were talking about how we used to serve the bishops together, and we like this was when the leader was in jail. Like while he's there, we were serving them because he was recently put in jail, and um, we remember like we were talking about how in like the end of the table there was this giant throne that was wrapped in saran wrap, so there had no like dust particles on it, for whenever he returns he can have a clean seat.
Oh my
It was
gosh.
just
Wild.
like they chose like the best of the best, the holiest of the holiest. And in this case, it was like me and her and two other girls that were like the best of the best of our area. And like that's what they do. And then they choose like people, like they choose girls specifically, only girls to serve, and they only choose girls to do this flag ceremony that they do during their supper, which is a big event for them. And like it also is like a pretty much a show for the leader, for him to see you in this like native outfit. Um, so yeah, it's very disturbing once you like
Yeah.
sit back and look at it, and it's just a lot to take in after all that. Yeah.
So were a lot of the kids in the cult homeschooled?
So they they were all pretty much like public schools unless the parents chose otherwise, but they wanted you to spread the gospel to them, or the doctrine actually is the proper word for it. They have their own doctrine, so they want you to be a little light, because they call it the light of the world. So you want to be a light in the world, and you got to go out in the world to do so. But like at the same time, they are making cities, or they're attempting to make cities in the US just for them, like just a little, they call it like the city of the light of the world. And yeah, have like grocery stores and all this and that in there. But and when you live in your hometown, you're supposed to go out and spread that. That means like you're signing up to be bullied.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, you don't. I mean, for girls specifically, for girls, it's worse, because then you get asked like, do you like have no legs or blah blah blah. I would get the question of, do you even have legs?
Yeah.
Because I was wearing a skirt every single day, and it has to be flowy skirts. Can't be any tight skirts. If it's tight, then you're not being holy enough. It can't show the silhouette of your body. That's what they say. And I'm also saying that same thing goes for pants. Like it's showing a silhouette of your body, so you're tempting men. It's all about men in this case. So yeah, it makes a lot of women angry when I like explain that.
Yeah, that's crazy too, because I feel like in just like modern day Christianity, like they already think that like it's strict, and it's like, yeah, it's actually not that bad when you hear about the cult.
Yeah, yeah. But I see, like, there was something that I got explained when I became Christian. It was so interesting to hear it that way. But he said, like, who did Jesus appear to first? A woman.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Before Jesus, women did not have a voice.
Yeah.
Women didn't have a right. Women were like the worst because they were being dirty or going around men or whatever. And they didn't have a voice to say anything. They didn't have a right to stand up for themselves, but Jesus gave them that.
Yeah.
He said, "No, like come onto my team, and I'm going to give you a voice. I'm going to give you a purpose. I'm going to give you everything, like an actual value that
Yeah.
they were never given before." And I think that that was really beautiful to see that and like hear that as well, because and that's something that I admire about Kirby is like he does give me the value that I should be having because he believes in God. But
Yeah.
that's because he believes in God. That's because he is a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And like if he's going to be a Christian, then he's going to love me the way that Jesus would want him to love me. And like that's a big thing I think for a lot of women, that they don't think they deserve that love. And but it's like, no, you should not settle for any less than what Jesus loved you for
Yeah.
and is loving you for. So I think that when it comes to like them putting like the cult putting women down, that's like red flag, red flag, because Jesus would not want that for you.
No.
Like he gave you a voice. So
Yeah.
yeah. So about like rules and that kind of stuff, I think it all just really consists of like who are you with? Like what kind of man are you with? And that kind of thing. Or who are you surrounding yourself with? Are they loving God? Are they loving Jesus? Are they, because that's something that another thing that I realized was good works does not give you salvation. It's
Right.
salvation that makes you do good works.
Yeah.
Right.
Salvation makes you a better person. So being saved, it makes you think twice of like cussing someone out or like, just being a rude person because you think, oh, it's not what I should be doing. That's not how Jesus would want me to love people. So I think that's a big thing, a big difference between that, because no matter what people may say about the cult, about, oh, people are so welcoming, in my experience, no, they are not. Like, they are not welcoming. They are not loving. They're like, they judge, but that's because they don't know God's love.
Yeah.
They all they know is what they are told to do, and they don't appreciate like Jesus love because they don't know it.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that the tree by its fruits.
Mm-hmm.
What is that saying?
A good tree bears good fruit.
Yes, exactly. So they try to tell you like, oh, don't look at the members because we're all human, and it's like, but actually, like that's what tells you if they're God's people or not,
Right.
because they're being loving or they're not being loving, or they're acting a certain way. I got bullied so bad by some of those members in the cult, like to a point where my mental health was very bad, and this to the point where I did not want to live anymore because it was so bad. Like they were talking about me being on trial, which is when you do something that's not according to what they want. Like if you date someone that's out of the cult, like that's not from the cult, so a Gentile, then you're put on this trial for a year. And I was like, well, first of all, no, I was not. And then second of all, that's not your business anyways. But they were saying all these kinds of terrible things on Instagram and posting it everywhere. And it was really bad. And it was just like surprising to me that my own people
Mm.
would be doing that.
Mm.
And they would like I had so much better friends in school that weren't from the cult than the people in the cult.
Yeah.
And but I mean, it's also because the cult, they like when they put people against each other,
They like pit you against each other. And
they
it's
pit
all
you
about
against each other.
comparison and yeah.
Exactly. Who's the best of the best? Who's the holiest? Who does this the better? Or who follows the rules better? It was all about who is better. And it wasn't about how can we help each other. You don't
Yeah.
talk about your problems, and that's a big thing of Christianity, is like in the place that I'm at now is like our life groups, like we sit around, we talk about our struggles, and we help each other. And that's the thing, is like you're allowed to be a human, but at the same time as you get to help people, you get to
Yeah.
help each other. And that's a huge difference. between the people.
Yeah, there's so much more grace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's not like a comparison of works. It's a
Yeah.
comparison of there's no comparison because we're all saved by grace through faith.
Exactly. Yeah.
And there's no better or worse. It's just you're saved. So there's no competition, there's no better than the other.
And there's no questioning
Yeah.
each other's salvation.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Exactly. It's like you don't have to judge that person, because I mean, we've all been through it. We've all sin is sin.
yeah.
And like when people would say that, I was like, yeah, but, and it was my own like pride thinking like, oh, well, but I didn't do that. And it wasn't until recently that I heard like the ground at the foot of the cross is leveled. Like no one is on a better place than others. It's all just level. Like it's all the same standard. Like there's no different ones. And that's when I realized like, oh, okay, that's a better understanding of how sin is sin. Like,
Yeah.
visualizing it. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
So, how long did you date Kirby before you guys? Well, first of all, how long did you date before you were saved and became a Christian? And then, like, how long were you guys dating before you got married and all that?
That's a funny story. So in the cult, you're not supposed to date someone for more than 3 months. Yeah. Once you date that person, well, you're supposed to ask permission to your pastor or whoever's there, and you're not supposed to date for more than 3 months. You get to 3 months, and then you decide, are you going to marry this person, or are you never going to speak to them again?
3 months?
Yeah. So you have to marry them at that point.
Oh,
so then they give,
man.
if you choose, all right, we're gonna get married, and in this marriage, this like courtship, you can't hug, you can't hold hands, you can't kiss, you can't have a conversation alone, you can't do anything like that. It has to be in front of your parents. If it's gonna be a phone call, it's with your parents standing right beside you. It's very strict. It's very like ultimatum situation. And like you hardly know this person. I mean, I didn't know Kirby fully in 3 months.
Right.
So I would say like, well, I don't think I want to marry him in 3 months because I don't really know him. But it's, yeah. And then after those 3 months, they give you another 3 months to prepare your wedding. You have to get married within those 3 months. You can't be engaged for more than 3 months. So yeah, and then you're supposed to find your dress in those 3 months, or find your venue, wedding cake, everything, and then then you're married off. They also have unconditional people in the cult. These people that give their life to the leader, and he chooses who they marry. So they they don't know who their partner, who their person that they're marrying is gonna be till they call their name up. And they say like, hey, you are going to marry to this person. That's your wife. That's your husband. That's all you get. Yeah.
Oh,
so you don't have an opportunity to do anything like that. And it's so crazy. But I was like, there's some people that do choose that. And I know plenty of people that have, and I know plenty of people that have regretted it. And I mean, obviously.
Yeah.
And yeah, so Kirby and I dated because he wasn't from the cult. I didn't ask for permission. That was like my rebellious act. So we dated for a year and like 2 months, but around like 10 months or so of us dating, it was when I realized all this stuff. So once it was a year, he didn't want to marry me, or he didn't want to ask me to marry him until I believed, like until I was a Christian, which props to him. I mean, dang. But he didn't do that until then, because we had conversation of like, how are we going to raise our children in 2 different places? how are we going to get married from two different places? How are we going to go to church on Sundays if we believe two different things?
Yeah.
And I was determined, like, okay, we'll work it out. He's like, no, like, what if I don't want to teach my kids that, and you're gonna teach them that? And it's like, on his part, it was a great decision.
Yeah.
I didn't understand it until I started to believe, and I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Why he didn't want that. So we got engaged in February after those like year and 4 months, and then we were engaged for like 8 months, and then we got married October of 2022. Angelica, you were there. Dancing a little hard out.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, so we didn't get married through the cult, which was a very interesting thing. So August, before that, October, I had a mental crisis, and I was in a very like unstable place. It was just because my whole life had been turned upside down. I didn't even know who God was. I was questioning his existence entirely. I was such in a dark like spot, like, well, like if God was real, then why the heck did I go through all of that?
Yeah.
And it was just wondering where the heck was God when I was being bullied, or when was that? But it was just like, looking back to it, I realized where he was during that. He was the one that held my hand through not giving up on my life, and like he was the one that was holding me when I was crying my little heart out. And I realized that all, and I realized that it was all for a purpose, for a higher purpose, and for being here today.
Yeah.
You know, and it was so much all at once, I think. And in August, that was like a big moment for me, like just wanting to just be all done for. But I made it through, and I got the right help that I needed it. And then later that August, I went for the last time to the cult. I was so sure that this place was bad. I was so sure that this place was wrong, and this wasn't like God's place. But I went for respect for my parents, which it was my way of just, I was living under their home. I needed to respect them. It was the last thing I was going to do for them while living in their home. So just might as well. That day, and on Sunday morning, the pastor, he said, I'm going to have all these women lift up their hands, and I'm going to take their rings from them, whoever is wearing rings. And I was wearing my engagement ring. And I was like, oh, you are not touching my hand. I was ready to fight him. And he was just talking smack, really. He wasn't really going to do it, but he just like, so many women, you can see that they were like hiding themselves, because some of them were actually wanting to wear their engagement ring that their husband bought for them, or anything. Like, it was just like, there was just a couple of them that actually were wearing jewelry, or at least rings. And so after that, he called me to his office, and with my mom in there, because you're not supposed to be alone with a man ever. And he sat me down, and he told me, you know, wearing that ring is bad. Why are you doing it? And I was like, it's my engagement ring. And he's sitting there across from me wearing the most big gold ring I have ever seen.
Oh my
with
gosh.
a whole bunch of diamonds, while his members are poor.
Yeah.
Okay. And he's wearing this expensive suit where I'm sure it was like $1,000. And I know my suits, man. Like, I know fashion. I know where you got that from. You're wearing $1,000 drip on you, and then you're wearing your freaking big ring. I was so angry, and I was just seeing all of this go down right in front of me.
Yeah.
And he said, I hear you're getting married. And I say, I just did not want to speak because I was holding it all back. And he said, well, you didn't ask me for permission. And I said, no, I did not. And he said, well, I can marry you because you've stayed clean or so your mom says, that you've stayed clean. And I was like, no, thank you. And he's like, it'll have to be in your mom's house in the living room because your husband is not from church, so you can't have the honor of going through the temple. And I just went, but no, thank you. And then he goes on to say, you know what? You're going to marry this man and you're going to have 3 months of happiness. Only 3 months. And then after those 3 months, you're going to run back here and you're going to cry and you're going to tell me that I was right, that you weren't happy, and that it was that, and just maybe there'll be a space for you, but only if the apostle has mercy over you.
Oh my gosh.
What a manipulator.
And I said, I was like, okay. And he says, so are you going to marry him? And I go, yes. And he said, if you marry that man, you're going to hell. And like, that was the first time that someone just straight up told me, like, you're going to hell. And I mean, I knew for a fact I was marrying Kirby. And I said, okay. And in my mind, that was like my checklist.
Yeah.
Like, that was the last straw. Like, that was it. That was my moment telling me, this is a cult, Migs. You need to get out. And you're never going stepping foot in here ever again. So I said, okay, thank you. Got up, walked out, ran to the car, and I was like, never looking back. That was a moment where I think things broke with my mom and I, where she said, like, why did you speak to him that way? And I was like, why did I speak to him that way? Why did he speak to me that way?
Yeah.
I just left from wanting to not be alive anymore, all for you to sit there and let him speak to me that way, to tell me that I was going to hell. I was in a vulnerable state, and you brought me there, and you fed me to the wolves. How does that make me feel? How do you think that I'm feeling right now? And she like stayed quiet. I guess she realized what she just did. But yeah, so later on, whenever I got married to Kirby in October, I hadn't really been saved until last August, actually. Was when I was going with him to a different church with Kirby and his family, but my friend invited me to the church that I go to now, and I walked in and I said, okay, I feel something different here. And they were talking about being saved that day, and we kept going a couple of times, and it just stuck in my head. It's like, I am not saved yet. Like, I didn't understand it until that day.
Yeah.
And I took that decision in August. Then I pierced my ears, and my mom disowned me. So, yeah, I technically, like, my parents, like, they disowned me fully for that. And I felt a lot of pain at the time, because she yelled at me and told me that I disgusted her because I pierced my ears. Like, that's what got you? Yeah, I was like, really? But I guess, like, it was mostly the moment where she said, like, well, if she said, so you don't think that this place is the real church of God? And I said, no, Mom, I don't. And she said, so you think I'm going to hell? And I said, frankly, yeah. And she said, well, if, like, this church is going to hell, then I'm going to hell with them.
Wow.
And I sat there, and it just sunk in. And I said, that's not my mother. And you just told me I'm not your daughter. So, okay, this is where we draw the line. And I think that the best thing when people in this circumstance, like, if you get disowned, especially from people that, like, are from this cult, yes, it will feel personal, but at the same time, it's not truly them. And the only thing that you can do is pray for them, and hope that someday that they get back to their senses. But the greatest thing is like I had a support system. I had Kirby, I had my friends, I had people that were there for me through it all. And, I realized that blood isn't the people that you were born with. Like the blood that rushes through your veins, it's people that stay there, that love you for who you are and appreciate you for who you are and don't leave you when times get rough.
Yeah.
Or when I don't understand how whenever she said my love is unconditional for you, it became conditional the moment I didn't want to follow the cult. So I think that with like parents that are troubled like that, it's such a hard topic for people because they don't think that they are honoring their parents because their parents tell them you're not honoring me, you're supposed to be. And actually you are, you really are, because you're following God,
Yes.
because you're standing up for yourself, you are choosing God over anybody else, and that is how you truly honor your parents.
Yes.
And I went to church, and like without me even saying anything, like without me telling them what I had just gone through, they said, Migs, don't forget that we are your family. And I just was like, you didn't know what I just went through, and yet you told me that, and when I most needed it. And I just knew that that was like God telling me, like, you are not this world's daughter, you are my daughter.
Yeah.
Like, I'm taking you in. And so yeah, that was deep, but it's just the thing that is so prominent in my head for a lot of people that have gone through that, because a lot of people that have left the cult have been disowned. And it's so sad to see it, because they think all their lives that their parents were their unconditional love, all to find out that there was a condition, there was a where they drew the line. But yeah, I think they should be proud of themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's got to be so lonely too when you come out of it, because it's like everything you knew, everyone you knew, your own family, it's just like you kind of have to start from scratch. So I can only imagine. I like obviously thank God that you had that support system.
Yeah.
And it's such a beautiful redemption story of just like God's love and grace toward you through that. And I mean, through everything, through the bullying, through the depression, and even through this of your family just even disowning you, like you can still find the faithfulness of God, and you're still like clinging to that and allowing his people to minister to you and to take you in. And I think that's so beautiful. It's so beautiful and tragic at the same time, because you want, of course, it's your family. You want them to know the truth. It's hard to see them, you know, in that still and believing that lie. Even your mom said she would be willing to just go to hell with them.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, it really is so much a spiritual battle more than anything.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is really like shocking. I would say like it wasn't a very easy transition, even with the people around me loving on me. It wasn't easy. Can only imagine what it would be like without having those people.
Yeah.
Right.
And like having like friends that did go through that, and reconnecting with them and them telling me their story. We all have quite a similar story, but at the same time it's so different sometimes. Like it was like so many people have had it worse. Like my family did that, but it wasn't to the point where the only thing I told my mom is I love you. I told her like with all of it, all of you telling me that, I still love you. And a lot of people, they don't have God to refuge with that, so they don't know how to express that love and how to let go of the hatred that they may have for their families. And that's where it gets a little harder, because then you have that with you like all at all times. And then you also may not have a support system. And it's just like I was also going to therapy while through that. So I was able to like talk about it, and it was something that my therapist said, she's a Christian therapist, and she said, Migs, there's beauty in the ashes.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll find beauty in that. You'll find a reason and you'll find a purpose for that. Whether it's so small or whether it's for your own growth. But I did find a purpose in that. Like, I realized that it was God's way of showing me that he was ultimately my father, and like he was going to be the one there for me even when everything else failed. Like, you may not be able to trust in the people that you thought you could trust, in this case like my family, but I could always rely on God. I know that he's going to be there constantly when everyone else may not be there. So yeah,
that's such a good reminder too, in general, like in any form of your walk, because it's like ultimately that is where our fulfillment comes from. And no matter what, like, we can't get that fulfillment from any church, from any family, from any like relationship. Overall, everything else, like, our fulfillment should come from God and our relationship with God. I think that's why everybody has so many different views or so many different walks or so many different beliefs, whatever, because they're just trying to find fulfillment in different things. Yeah, ultimately that's what I just got from that, is that our fulfillment should come from God and nothing else, no matter what.
Yeah, he's the only constant thing that'll be in your life, even when everything else may be so hectic and just everywhere. It's truly that's going to be your constant thing. That's going to be your safe space and the place where you can rest. And like, that at the end of the day, you're always going to have that love. And that's something that I like to emphasize, is like, once you're saved, no one's going to take that from you. No one's just going to tell you, hey, you're going to hell. Because even if they do, it's not true. Right. And like, they can't say that. They don't have any power in saying that, because that's you and God. And like, that's like the most beautiful thing I've gotten from being a Christian, was being able to say, like, it's me and God. Like, that's my relationship with God, and everything else just is nothing compared to that.
Amen. Wow.
Yeah, that was quite a heavy thing.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing it, because
it's such a beautiful story.
Yeah, and I know there's still so much more. I'm so glad that you came on here to talk about this. Yeah, I feel like I've heard some parts of your story before, and so much of what you said on this I haven't even heard before, so it's like mind-blowing. Like, I just can't believe like the way these people think and the way they really think it's true, and the fact that it is such a big thing here, but people don't even really know about it. Like, I'm the people in it, obviously, and the people who have come out of it, who are sharing it, like you, but I never heard of this specific cult or even anything really like it. Like, I've heard of cults before, but not this specific one. And for it to be so big and probably growing, right? It's growing? Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy to see that people can be manipulated in a way like that and can be brainwashed. It's sad to see that it's so easy to do so when you don't have God.
Yes.
And that's the difference, is that a person that is a Christian can see where they're wrong. A person that has that relationship with God can see how to not get manipulated. But when you don't have that relationship, when you're not saved, then you're like, oh, well, maybe that's true. And and you can get brainwashed into it.
Yeah.
Because you're not rooted.
Because you're not rooted. There you go. Yeah. So thank you for letting me share that.
Yeah. Well, we've got to ask you our question we normally ask each other, and that's, what was your mundane miracle of the week?
Okay. This was something that happened to me at the grocery store yesterday. Yeah, I was at the grocery store and I was in line, and there was this lady of like three people in front of me, and she was paying for her groceries, and she literally only had enough for her arms to hold. It was not anything extravagant. It was not a cart full of stuff. It was just enough for her to hold. And she needed to pay 99 cents left on her groceries. and she did not have them. And like I heard her talking about it, but I didn't really, I don't like to eavesdrop on people, but I heard like someone talking about something about money and her groceries, and I was just, but she like was asking the lady behind her, "Hey, can you help me? Like, it's just 99 cents, and I know it may sound ridiculous, but I don't have it, and it's just for the rest of my groceries." And like, I heard that, and I was like, "Oh gosh." And I was hoping like, okay, maybe she's gonna help her or something. And the lady was just like shook her head and kind of ignored her. And
Wow.
she asked the man after that, and he only had like a water, like packet of water, and she asked him, and he was like on his phone just trying to ignore her and just shook his head. I was like, it's 99 cents.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like, I'm sure he had that in his pocket. I'm sure people had that in the bottom of their purses. It wasn't that much money. Like, it wasn't like, even like $20 may be too much for someone. It was 99 cents. So I heard her, and she said, "Anyone, please?" And I said, "Oh, I got it. It's okay." And I went up there. I paid it with my phone. And she said, "Oh my gosh, bless your heart. Like I can't believe that. Like God sent me an angel." And she like showed me her groceries, and she said, "This is just what I have for dinner." This was all for her dinner.
Wow.
And I said, "Don't worry about it. That's totally fine and whatever." And she's just like thanking God. Like, she starts crying, and she's just thanking God, and over and over and over again. And then I finally was able to go, like, I guess she was putting her groceries away in her little recyclable bag. And by the time I paid, she was about to leave too. And she said, "Thank you so much. You have no idea how much this means to me." And I was like, "You have no idea how much it means to me to help you," just because it was something so small. It was such like a small thing, but it reminded me of my childhood when my parents didn't have 50 cents to pay for our groceries, and we had to put stuff back. And it was like I was giving my child self those 99 cents. And like, it's like healing almost.
Yeah.
But it was just almost like a way that God was showing me, like, you have that now, Migs. Like, I'm putting my groceries away in my car, and I'm just bawling my eyes out at this point. I'm crying because, like, I'm putting one grocery after another, and I'm realizing, like, Lord, you blessed me with this stuff, and like, you blessed me with my food, and I don't have to worry down to the cent anymore. And that's just such a moment of like God showing me that, and showing me that I'm actually able to help other people now that may be in the situation I was when I was a kid. So yeah, that was my miracle.
Wow. That gives
Yeah.
me chills.
Yeah, and that shows so much of your heart too, because your mundane miracle is about how you helped someone else. It's not even about yourself, like what someone did for you. It's about you helping someone else, and that's just so sweet.
Well, I think it helped me heal too.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
emotionally, it was just like a moment where I was like, "Oh wow, like, Megs, you've come this far." Like, and it was like a moment where God stopped me and was like, "Look around. Like, you have this now."
Yeah.
And so yeah.
Wow.
And that's exactly what mundane miracles are all about, is like, it's like little God moments of being reminded that He is the giver of all good things. And yeah, it's great to remember that.
Yeah, I like to describe my entire life as that consists of but God moments.
Yes.
Like, I was in a cult, but God, and this and this and that, but God. So yeah.
That's so good. Well, thank you so much for sharing.
Where can the people find you if they want to follow along in your journey?
So I actually have a whole Instagram just for this journey of like everything. It's called Journey of True Light, and on Instagram. But yeah.
Perfect. We'll put that in the show notes
Right.
so that everybody can find you.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming on.
We loved having you.
Yeah, we love you.
When we were like starting this podcast and we were thinking about our dream guests, you were at the top of the list.
Aw.
Immediately, both of us were like, Migs.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you.
I'm so glad
I'm so blessed for this.
Yeah, I'm so glad that it worked out and that you were able to come on and talk to us.
Yeah, of course. I love it. I love watching y'all's podcast, everything. It's just so much fun. I love it. I find little things. I'm like, oh, wow, I did not know that.
Oh,
Kind of-
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for listening to our podcast.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for listening, guys.
See you next week.
Peace.